Exotic car brands are the best. Satisfying all of the wants and desires of our inner childs. Fast. Pretty, colorful, loud. But when you stack them all up against each other, how do we decide which exotic car brand is the best? Well, you just watch this video because I'm about to tell you. That's how. The wildest, most insane, most harebrained exotic car brands ranked from worst to best. That means no Dodge, no Toyota, and no Audi. Sorry, Brad. We did limit ourselves to the 20 most popular brands that we could find because there's zillions of exotic car brands. So if your favorite car isn't on this list, I'm sorry, let me know in the comments and I'll try to bring them up in a future video. With that, our first brand, or worst brand, is an odd one. And let's just say they have set themselves a blazing reputation. You see, Zenvo is an odd supercar company out of Denmark, and all of their cars are radical and a little bit underrated. But there's just a few things holding back Zenvo from being a real competitor. First of all, their production numbers are nearly microscopic compared to most of their competitors. They're only pumping out about 5 cars a year, not really giving a lot of buyers a chance to snag one and make press and be in the public eye. And of course, there's also the very small issue of that their cars tend to catch on fire.
And that was the end of that.
Let's move on to a company that's got a little bit better way of making cars tend to not catch on fire and a little more performance focused. And that company in question is Radical, which is maybe my favorite name of a car brand ever, because I love radical and tubular and gnarly. Somebody make a gnarly supercar, please. That would be bodacious. Now, Radical is most notable for making its Le Mans-inspired cars that are street legal, with one of the greatest examples being the Road Rapture, which is a fantastic car, but it is a street legal Le Mans car, and all of the frustrations that entails. Yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. You see, their cars are mostly track toys. This is not usually the kind of car you would daily drive, and that's kind of why this is a little lower on our list. And it's probably a big reason why Radicals don't catch on as much as other manufacturers. On paper, the idea of a track-ready, street-legal race car sounds nice, but in reality, these things are like a total pain in the ass to drive every day. And the price tag is really hard to justify. Now, the next best company on my list has a little more heritage to its name, because it has made some seriously cool cars throughout the years. The exotic car brand Noble comes from across the pond, and sadly hasn't made a lot of splash over here in the States. Their most notable model, the M600, actually uses the same engine as the Volvo XC90. Of course, it's been tuned to pack a serious punch, but it's pretty weird to have a car powered by a Volvo engine. I mean, when you're at the Cars and Coffee, that's not the fact you want to bring up to the other supercar owners. You see, Noble was once a great car company, but I don't think today they're really getting anyone excited anymore. They used to. They used to be the plucky Lotus wannabe that caught fire a lot. Now, they're another supercar maker, but who's talking about Noble? Now, next up is a brand I talked about recently. A brand started by one of the greatest automotive designers of all time. The same man responsible for practically the entire invention of the hypercar. Gordon Murray is a name that any supercar enthusiast worth a grain of salt should know. He's the man behind a great number of insane automotive projects that you are very familiar with. We could make a whole video about all the things that Gordon Murray has done. If we should, let me know down below. I'd like to kind of do that. But for now, we'll just focus on his latest project, the T50. It is pretty much the direct successor to the McLaren F1 of the 90s. This 3-seater supercar is an accomplishment on its own right, but all anyone wants to really talk about is the giant fan coming out the back of it. Supposedly, the fan provides downforce and reduces drag, making the T50 one of the most interesting cars coming out soon, elevating Gordon Murray onto this list. Next, we're going to look at an American company that was blazing when it first opened up, but has since fallen a bit by the wayside. I'm talking about the American supercar manufacturer, Saleen. If you've ever seen the movie Bruce Almighty, you know exactly why this car manufacturer is on this list. The Saleen S7 was a mid-engined V8 supercar that sent the Europeans running for the hills when it came out. It turned out to be one of the best supercars you could buy in the early aughts, and it's also kind of when Saleen peaked. Sadly today, Saleen is making electric cars for the Chinese market. It's pretty sad to see where Saleen has ended up given their history. Still, today, the Saleen S7 is so badass, it still deserves a spot on this list, even if a bit low. Now sure, Saleen is no longer the shining star of American supercars, but this next brand wants to step into that role. Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus is an American car manufacturer that makes kit cars for the track. And they're insanely cool. And they have some of the simplest naming conventions of all time. You have the 003, which has a GM-powered V8 that screams. And the upcoming 004, which seems like a massive step forward for the brand. The 004 seems to take design cues from the MC12 coming out from Maserati, and is also a 3-seater supercar like the McLaren F1 and the T50 I just mentioned. The base liter of the 004 will have a 3.8-liter V6 pumping out about 520 horsepower. But who gives a shit about that? The top-of-the-line 004 will come packing a 5-liter V8 making 650 horsepower. I definitely like those numbers. And thanks to that, that means that SCG is an exotic car manufacturer that I think you should keep on your radar. Now, next up is an Italian brand that we talk about a lot on this channel, but mostly because their cars suck. But there's something coming out soon that I think elevates them pretty high on this list. You see, Maserati as a company has a complicated relationship with enthusiasts. We love them because they make a lot of noise and they look great. But they are some of the most depreciating and least reliable cars on the planet. And pretty soon, they're phasing out their most fun sports car, the Gran Turismo. But don't count them out yet. The upcoming Maserati MC20 is hopefully going to carry this brand into the future. It is powered by a 621 horsepower V6. And it is a mid-engine supercar, which if you ask me, revitalizes Maserati back into the forefront. I think the MC20 might just be the boost Maserati needs to be relevant again. Now, from one Italian company to another, I think this one's gonna surprise you, because this brand is responsible for some of the craziest cars on the road ever, but like, what have they done for us lately? I'm of course talking about Pagani. Pagani is like the Picasso of the car world. Their first supercar, the Zonda, was so crazy looking when it came out. There was nothing like it. And we absolutely love them for that. And the Zonda was a proper supercar, with an AMG V12 mated to a manual transmission. Pagani came out swinging from the start, and they have not stopped punching. There are new special edition Zondas like every other day. The C12, the Tricolor, the R, the Sync, the Revolution, the Rotini, the HP Barchetta. Okay, I made up one of those, but you get the idea. Once they ran out of things to call Zondas, they made a new car, the Huayra. And like the Zonda before it, the Huayra is an absolutely absurd supercar. And again, they've repeated the process of just releasing a ton of different editions of the Huayra without giving us something new. So Pagani, if you want to make it into the top 10 here, you gotta give us a new car, man. Now, from a car company that hasn't been doing anything for us lately and seems a little bit stuck in the past, to a car company that is leading the way for the future of supercars and hypercars. We're talking about the fully electric hypercar coming from Japan, the Aspark Owl. Aspark is a brand from Japan that only wants one thing: to make the fastest electric car ever. And their first offering is pretty spectacular. The Owl is a low-slung, fully electric hypercar, which is setting its sights on taking down automotive beasts like Rimac and Tesla. And they got pretty good aim, because the Aspark Owl goes 0 to 60 in a claimed 1.69 seconds. Nice. That is a ridiculous acceleration time. And as a JDM weeb, I am so pumped to see something so fast coming out of my favorite country. So who has them beat on my list? Well, who they're coming for. The electric supercar maker, Rimac. Rimac is a newer company that debuted with the Concept 1, bringing with it 1,000 horsepower and a big ol' accident on an episode of Grand Tour. Good resume so far. But the Navara is the next step for Rimac. It has double the horsepower at 2,000 horsepower, and claims to hit 0 to 60 in 1.85 seconds. You see, Rimac has been making serious waves with its cars. And if you've been paying attention to the news lately, they've even partnered with Bugatti, which is why I elevated Rimac above Aspark, because I think the future of Rimac is pretty bright. Okay, I know. You guys hate electric cars. I'll take a break from them for a second and go completely the opposite way and talk about one of the most stripped down, classic, manual, track-focused, performance-based manufacturers of all time. Lotus. Taking up the lowest spot in our top 10. Lotus is one of those brands that's been around for so long, it's starting to grow moss. Over its long history in motorsports and road-going cars, Lotus has designed and released some of our favorite cars of all time. From the Esprit to the Elise to the Exige to the current Evora. Lotus has so many great examples of the cars that they can create, and they're so unique to Lotus. They are the kings of lightweight, great handling performance cars that emphasize performance over creature comforts every time. Well, At least until the Aviha drops. Then we'll see. Now for the next spot on our list, we're gonna step away from convention and common sense and talk about a brand that emphasizes excess over everything. And I'm talking about the simply named W Motors. You see, W Motors comes from the hometown of excessive, Dubai. If it doesn't have a price tag of $1 million or comes with a pet tiger, it doesn't really matter here. And that's why W Motors and the Lycan Hypersport fit in so well. You see, the Lycan is one of those cars that breaks all the rules and apologizes for nothing. Coming with a flat 6 engine making 780 horsepower, a holographic display, diamonds in the headlights, sapphires in the taillights. This is basically Dubai the car. Their sophomore effort, the Fenrir, is a little more reserved, a little more focused on actual performance, making 900 horsepower and a little less, diamonds and sapphires business. But still, it's gonna cost you $1.4 million to get in the driver's seat. And that's what I like about W Motors. They found their niche and they're just running with it. They don't care that you think their cars are too expensive or they're too excessive. And I just can't hate them for that. Now, from an over-the-top, ridiculous, flashy brand to one of the more quiet, reserved, and dare I say, buttoned-up brands of all time, Aston Martin. You have to admit, whether you like them or not, Aston Martin is one of the classiest car companies of all time. And their recent release, the 177, was a complete stunner when it came out, surprising everyone and showing everyone that Aston Martin still had what it takes to stand up against supercar companies. As of late, they're becoming a little more docile, but they want you to know that they're still capable of being insane. You see, they got the upcoming Valkyrie and Valhalla, which are some of the coolest named cars of all time. I can't wait to watch a Bond movie where he's piloting one of these things and, invariably jumps it over something or shoots a rocket out of the back of it. So yes, if you look at the whole history of Aston Martin, there's a lot of boring years in there. But this list is about right now and what's relevant right now. And I think with these models coming out from Aston Martin, they definitely have earned a place in the top 10 because Aston Martin is coming out with some crazy shit. Now, speaking of crazy shit, have you ever looked at a Mustang or a Camaro and thought, that needs more horsepower? Well, then you're probably American. And if you are, you're probably a big fan of Hennessey. You see, the Hennessey is the kind of company that looks at a tiny little lightweight compact Lotus Elise and goes, what if we could make that have 1,000 horsepower? That's the DNA of Hennessey. They take normal street cars and turn them into something special. But are they exotic cars? Maybe not. What elevates them to an exotic car manufacturer are the Hennessey Venom and F5. The Venom is that aforementioned Lotus. They took a Lotus Elise, they stretched it out, and stuck an LS7 V8 in it, making 1,200 horsepower. Then they set a speed record of an astronomical 267 miles per hour with it. Like they say, everything's bigger in Texas, including your Lotuses. Now, the coming successor to that Venom is the F5, and is a completely new car for the company. This time powered by a V8 that turns out 1,800 horsepower and is claiming to reach a top speed of 301 miles per hour. I'm really hoping they can hit that mark. Now, next up is another American brand that is obsessed with speed. And maybe they're kind of into some controversy too. Shelby Supercars, or SSC, has been taking cracks at the top speed record for a while. They started with the Ultimate Aero and its follow-up, the XT, in 2004. Both cars around 1,000 horsepower and have been damn good for the company. But their newer model, the Tuatara, has 1,350 horsepower and one of the lowest drag coefficients of any car in production ever. Their initial top speed run took place back in October, and they claimed to hit 331 miles per hour. But claimed is the operative word there. You see, it turns out reality wasn't really on their side. Ultimately, SSC had to admit defeat and the record was taken away from them. But you can rest assured that they are going to take another crack at it soon. And I'm fairly confident that they could reach that mark. Now, next up is a brand that's one of the biggest in the business. You're not a famous person unless you own one. And I'm of course talking about Bugatti. Bugatti is a company that I don't really need to introduce to you. You know what Bugatti is. They have a storied history in motorsports, and the Veyron took the whole world by storm when it was released. They completely changed the definition of supercar. And Bugatti has not rested on their laurels. They come out with another record setter, another world-changing car all the time. They create the cars that set the standard for speed. And of course, you really can't say you're famous unless you own one. And I don't own one, so I guess I'm not famous. In 2021, you pretty much measure the success of somebody by how many Bugattis they own in their garage. Now, what could beat Bugatti at this game? Well, only one of the most storied and recognizable exotic car manufacturers of all time, Ferrari. You ask anyone on the street, name an exotic car brand, 99% of the time they're gonna say Ferrari. It's the household name of exotic cars. Their racing history alone is enough to make them one of the best car manufacturers, period, of all time. They've been dominating racing since the 40s and are still relevant today on and off the track. And the Ferrari lineup of road cars is all hitter, no quitter. At least now it is. They had a little bit of a rough 90s and early 2000s, but today, Ferraris are incredible. Sure, the LaFerrari has a stupid name, but it's an incredible car. And with the 812 Superfast, they may be making one of the last V12 supercars of all time. I have a big soft spot in my heart for Ferrari. Just, don't tell Nissan. But is Ferrari crazy enough? Well, our next brand says no. I'm of course going to be talking about fast eggs, like really fast eggs. Koenigsegg's. Koenigsegg believes that supercars are supposed to be insanely fast, look ridiculous, and be hard to pronounce, making them one of the kings of ultra-rare, ultra-fast cars. And why they're so high on this list is they're pioneers of technology, and the sheer speed of their lineup is unparalleled. The Jesko is one of the fastest cars in production, and the Gemera will give family-oriented supercar owners a way to drive their kids to school. That's a hell of a lot faster than a school bus. Koenigsegg kind of came out of nowhere, but today they've established themselves as one of the top-tier supercar makers in the world. And I think their ability to surprise us on the regular is why they deserve a spot on the podium here. So who's taking home silver? The only brand that is probably more insane than Koenigsegg. Lamborghini. I mean, you all knew this was coming, right? Like, Lamborghini's gotta be in the top spot. Lamborghini basically defines supercars year after year. They invented the mid-engine supercar with the Miura and have been leading supercars ever since. What else puts them so high on our list? They're just so insanely relevant today. With the new Countach, basically everyone wants to own an Aventador, even their most boring cars like the Gallardo. And they don't seem to have any intention of slowing down. Even their electric supercars that are coming up seem to be on the next level of insanity, meaning we might not actually miss the V12 sound that much. We just cannot wait to see what Lamborghini does next. Now, the top spot is gonna be contentious, and I can't wait to read your comments. But if you ask me, the #1 spot for supercars and exotic cars right now belongs to McLaren. Look, I know you're probably already typing a response, but what I think is that McLaren has the most hype in the game right now. With each of their supercars and hypercars, there's just no lack of interesting stories to tell with McLaren. Each of their releases raises the bar every time. Yes, Lamborghini's insane, but you kind of expect that out of them. McLaren's doing things slightly differently, and I love that about them. The Senna, the P1, the Speedtail, and the upcoming Artura are some of the most interesting supercars and hypercars ever made. Just watch Daddy Doug's video about the Speedtail. It's incredible.
And it is my favorite hypercar in existence.
And the speed coming out of each of their cars is absolutely top tier. And if you ask me, they have some of the most beautiful cars ever designed. And bonus, unlike Lamborghini, McLaren isn't making a stupid-ass SUV. Now, I'm sure you're still mad. Guess what? I have one more piece of evidence as to why this deserves the top spot. We ran a poll a little while ago, and you guys actually voted McLaren as your favorite brand. So, get mad at me, but you only have yourselves to blame. So that's it. That's our comprehensive list of the 20 top exotic brands out right now. And sure, this list can change every day. I'm sure this list ruffled your feathers. And I love the debate. You guys see me in the comments on every video. So please, let me know down below what you think. Who did I leave out? Who's your favorite? Let's have a little bit of fun in the comments. Just make sure you subscribe to the channel and please like the video. And as always, no matter what, no matter where you agree or disagree on this list, keep living the ideal lifestyle.